Let's go ahead and get this show on the road, people. What is going on, everybody? Thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mikasa Sukasa. And of course, as always, I'm your humble host, Niko House. For today's show, we're going to be breaking down this terrible Afghanistan situation. I mean, it is terrible for a plethora of reasons. And unfortunately, I actually don't even know if we have enough time to go into just how bad the circumstances are, because you would literally have to go back like 40 or 50 years. Then just for my generation's involvement in Afghanistan, you would have to go back 20 years. And like, it's that bad. The Taliban has effectively taken back over the country, and it seems like there wasn't much of a fight put up. And I would probably be one to argue that that might be by design, but we'll get into that in a second. But before we dig into the deep dive of what's happening right now in Afghanistan, I wanted to show you all a little speech of Joe Biden basically admitting not only his intentions on sending the military back to Afghanistan, if necessary, but also, and more specifically, his intentions to use various conflicts around the world to send military troops to those countries as well. So let's go ahead and check that out.
My national security team and I have been closely monitoring the situation on the ground in Afghanistan and moving quickly to execute the plans we had put in place to respond to every constituency, including and contingency, including the rapid collapse we're seeing now. I'll speak more in a moment about the specific steps we're taking, but I want to remind everyone how we got here and what America's interests are in Afghanistan. We went to Afghanistan almost 20 years ago with clear goals. Get those who attacked us on September 11th, 2001, and make sure al-Qaeda could not use Afghanistan as a base from which to attack us again. We did that. We severely degraded al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. We never gave up the hunt for Osama bin Laden, and we got him. That was a decade ago.
Okay. Anybody want to go ahead and point out the issue with that statement? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and state the obvious. We didn't find Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan, and it seems like everyone constantly forgets this fact. You know where we found him at? Pakistan. That's where we found him, guys. Do you know the nationality of Osama bin Laden? He's Saudi Arabian. He's actually part of the Saudi Arabian royal family. Do you know the countries that never get brought up? Even as you're going to listen to the next couple of minutes of this speech, the countries that never get brought up in this conversation about, protecting the world from terror are Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. What? Isn't that super weird how it was like the whole thing was about making sure we exhausted all of our resources to get Osama to make sure he can't do what he did again. But we don't go to we never brought up once or invaded the country that we found him in. And we didn't even bring up once nor invade the country that he is originally from. That's just really weird. I don't know. That's just me. Let's hear what he has to say.
Our mission in Afghanistan was never supposed to have been nation building. It was never supposed to be creating a unified, centralized democracy. Our only vital national interest in Afghanistan remains today what it has always been: preventing a terrorist attack on America's homeland. I've argued for many years that our mission should be narrowly focused on counterterrorism, not counterinsurgency or nation building. That's why.
Okay. So in the comment section, please explain to me the difference in the two. It's only counterterrorism, guys, not counterinsurgency. Even though I just said that our whole goal was to make sure that we couldn't, that Osama couldn't establish a whole nother a base to launch from, which would literally be a counterinsurgency mission. That's the excuse y'all used, was counterinsurgency. You was one of the ones pushing this. This man, they're just saying a bunch of, this is literally doublespeak, people. This is literally doublespeak. But let's continue.
I opposed the surge when it was proposed in 2009 when I was vice president. And that's why, as president, I'm adamant we focus on the threats we face today in 2021, not yesterday's threats. Today, the terrorist threat has metastasized well beyond Afghanistan. Al-Shabaab in Somalia, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, al-Nusra in Syria, ISIS attempting to create a caliphate in Syria and Iraq, and establishing affiliates in multiple countries in Africa and Asia. These threats warrant our attention and our resources. We conduct effective counterterrorism missions against terrorist groups in multiple countries where we don't have permanent military presence. If necessary, we'll do the same in Afghanistan. We've developed.
Bro. See, that's why I gotta do y'all shadow work. See what happens when you don't do your shadow work, your shadow will start snitching on you, like, because that's what happens. And that's what Biden just did. I want y'all to listen to this whole thing, not the whole thing, but this part once again. Biden just told you, what have we been talking about on this show the last couple of weeks? We've been talking about Africa. I've been telling y'all what the setup is about to be, and he's literally letting you know right now.
Sources. We conduct effective counterterrorism missions against terrorist groups in multiple countries where we don't have permanent military presence. If necessary, we'll do the same in Afghanistan. We've developed counterterrorism over-the-horizon capability that will allow us to keep our eyes firmly fixed on the direct threats to the United States and the region, and act quickly and decisively if needed. When I came into office, I inherited a deal that President Trump negotiated with the Taliban. Under his agreement, U.S. forces would be out of Afghanistan by. I opposed the surge when it was proposed in 2009 when I was vice president. And that's why, as president, I'm adamant we focus on the threats we face today in 2021, not yesterday's threats. Today, the terrorist threat has metastasized well beyond Afghanistan. Al-Shabaab in Somalia, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, al-Nusra in Syria, ISIS attempting to create a caliphate in Syria and Iraq, and establishing affiliates in multiple countries in Africa and Asia.
Now, if only there was someone out there who could have told y'all that this was coming. We just did a video, not even 3-4 days ago, where I was letting everybody know that they're about to make Africa the battleground for the new war on terror. A lot of people covered the bombings that took place, the drone strikes that took place in Somalia. He mentioned Syria, right? It's like, what? Why? In what way has there ever been a threat, a terrorist threat, based out of Syria? In fact, whenever United States decided to leave Syria alone for more than 3 days, all of a sudden Russia and Syria have no problem taking out ISIS. But whenever the United States comes in, like when we tried to allege that Bashar al-Assad committed chemical weapons attacks against against his own people, we ended up conducting a strategic military strike where ISIS literally hid behind and followed the destruction of the United States attack. Because that's what you do when you're on military missions. And they were able to get in closer. He mentioned Iraq because, of course, we don't have any intention on leaving Iraq. But it's like, why? You notice how he just says stuff and he's like, yeah, that's where it's at. Those are the threats right over there for sure. It's like, well, why are they in Iraq? We just know they're there. Why are they a threat to the United States? They just are. I feel like this is pretty obvious at this point, right? Like, does any okay? So going back to what I said earlier, Osama bin Laden is Saudi, or he was Saudi Arabian. We found him in Pakistan. So amongst these new threats that Joe Biden is claiming could potentially do damage to the United States, isn't it super weird that once again, there is no mention of Saudi Arabia, nor is there a mention of Pakistan, when in that region, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan fund, and in Pakistan's case, houses more terrorists and terrorism than any other country in the region. That's super weird, right? I mean, hell, the president of Pakistan literally bragged about how many terrorists they have. He bragged about it, actually. See, but he got them terrorists that do what we tell them to do. It's different. Saudi Arabia only advocates for terrorism that we tell them to advocate for. That's why. Now, some of you may be wondering what may encourage the perfect storm or the exact set of circumstances that could lead to the United States feeling necessary to end up back in Afghanistan without too much pushback, and even having some people cheer on the United States sending the military back. Well, they tried the whole thing with the women's rights, because all of a sudden the United States pretended as if they cared about women's rights, like, at all. First of all, when they're separating people from their mothers, their grandmothers, putting women in cages. We found out that they were sterilizing. ICE was sterilizing women. They were sterilizing immigrant women, and almost nothing was done about it. But now we're expected to care. We're expected to believe that the United States cares. Yeah, just like y'all care about my health so much that you locked us down, took our money away, told us we couldn't go to work, and then didn't give us health care. But it was all about saving our lives. Yeah, okay. So maybe if the Taliban was magically able to get back in control using perhaps weapons from a military base, something maybe. Taliban fighters mock U.S. troops at an abandoned military base's gym. And I don't know if y'all know, but while they were at the gym, they also took some weapons. They took some weapons, guys. That's crazy, huh? Now, I know what. So a lot of stories have actually been wiped off the internet because they were just straight up being honest. Like, yeah, they ran in these abandoned bases. Now, abandoned bases don't have Afghan security forces, because those are two things don't make any sense. It wouldn't be abandoned if there were truly Afghan security forces. Now, even if there were Afghan security forces present, which I'm not entirely sure there weren't, but even if there were, they were probably ill-equipped to handle an entire Taliban assault, right? It's almost like the United States may have been setting them up for failure. Now, some people were like, no, maybe it's kind of normal. Maybe it's an accident that they ran. Because, like, of course, the United States has been there for 20 years. It makes total sense that they would randomly abandon a military base in the middle of, what, July? Just out of nowhere. And leave all their weapons. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not how it works. See, when you're deployed, if a single bullet is unaccounted for, you might end up court-martialed. It's like that. If a bullet is fired, there's like a whole report on the one bullet being fired. If a weapon is missing, the base is getting locked down. And somebody's probably, the commander is likely going to be the one that has to pay for it if it never gets found. I'm telling you, because I used to be a paralegal in the military, and this was an issue that happened all the time. My commander, who actually was a nice guy, had somebody take weapons, and this is why we were rear detachment. Our unit was deployed. Somebody took things that weren't even like they weren't even a weapon. They weren't even weapons, right? They were like magazines that were empty, little things like that. They kicked that man out of the military. It wasn't even his fault. He was like on leave when it happened. Because that's how serious it gets taken within that command, because somebody has to be accountable. So now what you're going to try and tell me is that the United States abandoned damn near an armory? And they were like, hey, we'll be back. We just gonna go get a pack of cigarettes and some McDonald's. And they just left what, four or five Afghan security force members there. And oh, surprise, surprise, the Taliban takes over the base and all the weapons and the vehicles. So now, not only can I just take over bases by overpowering them, I can get from base to base to base to base to city to city to city to city as quickly as I need to. In these vehicles, perfectly equipped to traverse the mountainous terrain of Afghanistan. Wow. Just wow. Like, this is really coincidental, because like this right here would be actually the perfect set of circumstances that would lead to what Biden is describing as a potential necessity for the United States to end up right back in Afghanistan. Huh? That's super weird. You mean like how in the Congo there was some lakes that there was some oil discovered in a few lakes around the Congo, and a lot of it, to such a degree that, if I'm not mistaken, Congo would have been the number one. They would have been the number one exporter of oil in the world. That much oil. And then all of a sudden, these terrorist groups just showed up only around the lakes. Only around the lakes. Okay? Nowhere else, just around the lakes. You know what their demands were? They didn't make any. I know some of you may be thinking, maybe they were trying to take over the government. Nope, they didn't want that. Okay? Well, maybe they wanted control of the oil. Well, no. Terrorist groups, especially affiliates of supposedly affiliates or alleged affiliates of ISIS, they don't have the technology or the capability to refine and export oil to any significant degree where it would be profitable for them to do something like that. Duh. Well, what are they there for? They just said that they are ISIS affiliates, and that's it. That's all. They're shooting people and standing by the lake, just guarding the lake. Now, because of these events, that is when the ISIS coalition made the announcement that the war on terror is now in Africa, and a bunch of countries are now going to, the Western powers, of course, are going to the DRC and Somalia and other places. And they got to go to where the lake is, right? Because that's where the terrorist organizations are. And, if there's oil here, I mean, I guess we could set up our base right here, just in case. We don't want y'all oil to get taken by nobody, guys. We don't protect it. We're going to protect it. You know how we protect Syria's oil? We're going to protect y'all's oil too. You set up the infrastructure. You build out from that area. And now the oil is yours. And more importantly, the oil doesn't belong to anybody in Africa, because that's the more important thing, right? And of course, the oil at that point, and at least in that area, will not also end up in the hands of China, which is obviously, quote unquote, supposedly an economic adversary of the United States. Yeah. That's crazy, huh? I can't believe that people actually thought that we were in. Some people did for a long time. They thought we were in Afghanistan to make peace, just like they thought they think to some degree. I know that's changed a lot lately, but they think that we're in Syria to make peace. They thought we were in Iraq we don't go to countries to stabilize them. We only go to countries to destabilize them. Do we not remember Libya? Oh yeah. See, a lot of y'all don't know the story of Libya, unless y'all have been here for a while, but a lot of y'all don't know. Y'all may not know the story of Libya. So let me go ahead and break it down for you. We've actually been in Libya for, I think, maybe a little bit before I was born, but at least in the 90s. And I know because it was not ever widely discussed, but I lived in Fort Bragg. Like, I have family that was in special forces, and they would always come back with like dinar and these rugs. You know, some of them had Gaddafi's face on it, whatever. But it was always from Libya. And this is in the 90s. Now, Libya is famous for two things outside of Gaddafi: oil and gold, amongst other stuff, but definitely oil and definitely gold. And Gaddafi was beloved by the majority of the African leaders, including one Nelson Mandela, actually. A lot of people said that he was one of the basically main things stopping terrorists from overtaking Africa, or at least that region of Africa. So even though Gaddafi was the elected chairman of the African Union, we decided he had to go. We claimed it was because he was doing what? Attacking his own people. Damn, that sounds real familiar, bro. That sounds real familiar. Huh? Where have we heard that story before? That's right. Assad. Oh, by the way, Gaddafi and Assad were friends. Or he was friendly with the Assad family, I should say. Next thing you know, we put up a puppet government in Chad, the country bordering Gaddafi's. Next thing you know, a bunch of freedom fighters, terrorists, end up over in Libya. So, of course, Gaddafi sent his troops to defend the country. Now, when those troops were sent to defend the country, that was then conflated in our media as he's attacking his own people. Huh? Sound familiar? Now, Gaddafi was unfortunately assassinated 2011 or 2012. I want to say it was 2012. And now there's open market slavery in Libya. The country is, it's, people don't even talk about it anymore because that's how bad it is. You know, if it's really bad, the United States is going to talk about it because it's our fault that it's that bad. And although we were supposedly there to assassinate an elected chairman of the African Union to stabilize the region as a humanitarian effort, all that humanitarian talk is kind of like dissipated now that there is open market slavery and Gaddafi is gone. So are we still under the belief that Syria, the situation in Syria, or our presence there, our presence in Afghanistan, our presence in Iraq, our presence in Libya, our presence in Somalia, our presence in the DRC, our involvement with Bolivia, our involvement with Honduras, our involvement with Guatemala, our involvement with Venezuela, our involvement with Haiti. Do y'all act right now with Belarus? They're trying to overthrow the president of Belarus right now. The first democratically elected president, who they had no problem with until he made an announcement that he's going to start working with China to frack the oil, so he's no longer dependent on the United States or Russia or anybody, and they're going to be able to use it as an export. And they have between 5 and 11 billion metric tons, which would make them one of the highest exporters of oil in the world, actually. I told y'all, I've been saying this for, I guess, months now. I've been telling y'all, I said, look, I don't know if y'all seeing what I'm seeing, but it looks like the empire is on an imperialist blitzkrieg. And Joe Biden just named all the countries that I've been talking about, that the Convo Couch has been talking about. And Here we are. Look, I mean, shit. I think Ben Norton put it pretty well in this tweet that he reposted on Instagram. So don't forget, Afghanistan under the United States military occupation was the source of over 90% of all the world's illicit opium. The CIA has long used opium, heroin, to fund its dirty covert ops. It also fueled the corporate created opioid epidemic back home. Everybody, I feel like a lot of people know about the opium situation in Afghanistan. It's about resources. The DRC doesn't only have oil. Same thing in Nigeria and Niger. They also have cobalt. Hell, I think at one point, was it Trump actually said, well, we can't leave Afghanistan yet. This a couple years ago, but he was like, we can't leave Afghanistan yet. Man, there's some minerals that we just found. We need to make sure that, can't make no money off of that. We got to make sure we can make some money off of it. Biden is just snitching on himself now. He's snitching on the entire empire. He just told y'all their plan, bro. He just told y'all their plan. If I could be so bold, can I speak once again from my experience as a person who was in the military, saw people punished for mishandling or negligent behavior regarding the armory. One of my friends was in Camp Lejeune over like a magazine or like a magazine holder for a year, bro. It was like not like some BS that he just shouldn't have did. He was stupid for doing it, and he knows it. But like they destroyed that man's life over that. So you're gonna tell me that same military just left an armory? You can't tell me. Well, you're gonna tell me they ain't have enough money for shipping costs? Bullshit. Congress just gave $25 billion more. What the hell are you giving the money for then? $25 billion not enough to cover you making sure your weapons don't land in the hands of terrorists? Come on, bro. It's obvious. And I really, really hope that you are beginning to see the pattern here. Because some people will get the issue of Venezuela correct, right? But then they'll get Syria wrong. They'll get the issue of Libya. Well, no, most people don't even understand what the hell happened in Libya. But they'll get the issue of like Iran, right? They'll be like, oh, Iran, we're on the right side of Iran, but then we'll get Haiti wrong. They'll get Bolivia correct, and then never talk about what's happening in Africa right now. All these issues are interconnected. It's the same pattern. Like what people have to understand and accept is, the US military and the CIA are lazy. They don't come up with new plans. They don't come up with new strategies. They don't come up with new narratives at all. Oh, don't forget that interview with that North Korean woman who supposedly escaped North Korea, but for some reason could speak perfect English like 3 weeks after she escaped to explain her story. Whenever North Koreans, based on, the academia that we have access to, it's hard for them to understand the dialect of South Korean, let alone learn English. It's hard enough for South Koreans to learn English, and they listen to our music all the time. They watch our television shows, and they can come over here and they can still not learn English after living here for 10 years, being around English speakers, because that's how different the languages are. Went to Korean church for 10 years. I know. And they're like, yeah, we don't like them either. The situation in Cuba, All of a sudden, those protests came out of nowhere, huh? They keep telling y'all the Castro regime. Bro, Raul Castro stepped down like 3 years ago. They have a whole new president. But they keep saying Castro regime, right? Because that elicits the emotional reaction they need for people to justify a regime change in Cuba. It's funny, right? Because everybody, they whenever they talk about Maduro, when they used to talk about Evo Morales, now even the president of Belarus, I think it's Lukashenko, when they talked about Gaddafi, Assad, all those countries, right? It's kind of crazy how those are always regimes. But when they talk about Saudi Arabia, well, that's the royal family. It's the royal family. Super weird how that works. It's the same shit over and over and over and over and over again. And I know some of you all, really quick before I go, I do want to talk about this fact because it's something that I think is very, very important. And thank you all, by the way, for the tips on Rockfin. I really appreciate it. It's something that's very important, at least to me, because I noticed the pattern. I've just noticed the pattern of what the empire does to hide and erase people. Then they have different tactics depending on the region. I know a lot of you all had no idea that Gaddafi was the elected chairman of the African Union. And it's not your fault necessarily. And that's because most of you all had zero idea that there was an African Union to begin with. Because it's not discussed at all, in ever, at all. You learn about the European Union in school, though, right? You learn about NATO in school, though, right? Mm-hmm. But if you learned that there was an African Union, and of course that would probably mean necessarily at some point you would have had to learn that Gaddafi wasn't elected chairman, and that the African countries did have a pretty good degree of organizing and wanted to exercise autonomy over their own countries. But see, if y'all know that there is an African Union, well, then that humanizes the Africans that we don't want you to care about. And we've already conditioned you enough to not only accept what is happening there, not only to ignore it, but to expect it. Could you fathom at all in your mind an announcement that the United States, because of a disagreement with the chairman of the EU, organizes assassination? Could you imagine that? Could you even, no, you couldn't possibly. You could not possibly fathom that. Ain't no way we killing a white man from Western Europe over a disagreement when he's the elected chairman of the EU. Right? But, well, Gaddafi, well, that's different. Who is he? He's just one of those broke, poor countries in Africa. They kill each other all the time, man. You can't know that Africans are unionized, because then maybe you might think they're like you. Oh, just like those kids in cages. Isn't that interesting? Israel and the United States are telling everybody else, y'all better accept those refugees that we created. It would be so much easier to not have refugees put a strain on other people's countries if you just stop destroying their countries. But don't get it twisted, because the reason, so the way refugeeing works when it comes to the empire, okay? The reason refugeeing works, or the way it works, excuse me, is that the Gusanos or the white Cubans of Cuba get to benefit from wet foot, dry foot. They get accepted. We give them refugee status. The white conservative Venezuelans, they get some love. They get some refugee status here. The Taliban, a lot of them, yeah, got refugee status here. They were part of a program where they would go to Pakistan. They would get fake IDs, fake birth certificate, and passport. They would come over here, new identity, new life. Some of them even with their child brides. We only care about the refugees who assist the empire, who we don't want blowing the whistle, or we need to protect from getting captured or and accidentally revealing what's going on. But the United States doesn't care about refugees. Just as Alexandria overflow facilities, Cortez. Remember how much she cared about those migrant children so much being held in them cages that she even staged an entire photo shoot wearing all white in the desert to show you how much she cared. And then Joe Biden became president. So they're not cages anymore. They're overflow facilities. Bruh. That, by the way, even though AOC decided to tweet something out today about our responsibility to those refugees that we created. Notice she didn't say anything about the border crisis that we also created. We have a responsibility, AOC. That's what you said. In circumstances that we create that cause refugees to migrate to the States, by your logic, you should be talking about the situation at the border just as much. Because did we not cause a crisis in Honduras? Did we not cause a crisis in Chile? Did we not cause a crisis in Bolivia? Did we not cause the various crises in Mexico? Have we not caused a crisis in Haiti? And then on Israel's side, boy, they got some nerve in Israel. Because last time I checked, Israel was out here sterilizing the Jewish Africans that were trying to flee terror and go to Israel where they thought that they would be welcome. Because, it's supposed to be for all Jewish people, right? It's not how white supremacy or imperialism works. And best believe, imperialism is largely foundationalized in white supremacy, even if only to make sure that you keep people divided and that you can dehumanize a group, because it's easier to just be able to ignore. With different groups, you have to have different approaches, and they have various tools to condition us to react differently to these different groups. Africans, they get ignored or erased. Arabs, they demonize them so that you're okay with it. You even cheer on the racism and the destruction that you see over there because it's for their own good. Democracy. Central and South America. Well, it's one of those dictators' fault down there. But that's what they do. But they're going to try to convince you that they actually care about refugees? Come on, bro. So if it's the refugees, if the refugees that the Western Empire cares about are the ones who generally get accepted and are immediately granted access into our countries, and that's non-discriminate when we're talking about the Middle East either. How do you think situations arise, like when that one person committed a terrorist attack on United States soil, and it turned out it was one of the Syrian refugees that escaped under the Obama administration that was an ISIS affiliate? How did he get in here? How did he get through FBI? I mean, and he went through the whole process. How did he get through the FBI background check? Come on, bro. FBI, NSA, and CIA is watching you through your iPhone camera while you in the bathroom masturbating to Pornhub before you take a shower. And they can't catch an ISIS affiliate in the United States that they let in? Come on, bro. It's obvious. What it looks like, in my final assessment, that they've done a very, very good job. They've been very diligent at destabilizing individual countries and regions. But now people are catching on too quickly. They're speaking out too quick. Like, look what happened with Cuba, right? Immediately, everybody's like, bullshit. Immediately. Yeah. Was there a lot? Either people were indifferent. There was that contingent, obviously, the Cuban population who still believes their slave owning corrupt great grandparents. Like in America, we got like in the South, they like got them grandparents. Man, the Civil War wasn't even about slavery. That's one of them Yankee lies. They got those in Cuba too. It's okay. Still love y'all. But then as people started throwing the facts out, then protests started looking a little bit thin. Then 2 days later, they just disappeared. I know because I live in Miami. All of a sudden, the SOS Cuba hashtag started disappearing. People started taking them flags off the back of their cars. People were catching on too quick. So you know what the best thing to do to make sure they don't catch on? Because that's why a lot of people in other countries, this is why a lot of people in other countries end up falling for the scapegoat that the United States picks out. Because, well, if you're broke, you're hungry. You have no hope. You can't see the forest for the trees. Not your fault, but hell, a lot of times you don't even have internet access just because of what we do to these countries. So who are you going to blame? You're going to scapegoat the person who is nearest to you, which is generally the leader. But that isn't even working as well as it used to. How long have we been trying to instigate regime change in Iran now? Over a decade now? Probably more. Whenever we overthrew Mossadegh using the same methods in 1954, it was nothing. It was quick. In and out. Boom. Bye. They got him out quick because he wanted to publicize the oil so that Iran could be the primary beneficiaries of the oil in their region. But now they can't get anybody out. They're trying. They can't do it. Everybody's catching on too fast. So what do you have to do? Well, just to stabilize the whole world. Y'all think I'm joking? No, destabilize the entire world. Make them so distracted by the adversity that they're facing so that all they can focus on is how to survive until the next day. You drive up the gas prices, even though we're the #1 exporter of oil in the world. We have all the oil we motherfucking need. There is zero reason as to why our gas prices are going up. None whatsoever. You disrupt supply chains artificially so. Because that's what they're doing. Y'all don't know what they're doing right now in the United States is exactly what they do to Venezuela. It's like the weirdest. You can't get a hold of the weirdest stuff because there's a call that's made to one of the private corporations. Hey, man, this month, don't be sending out that toilet paper. We'll compensate you. We'll compensate you. Don't even worry about that. But we need people pissed off. And all of a sudden, we have a disruption in supply chains, which is super weird, right? Because supply chains weren't disrupted at all during the pandemic. Remember, that was considered an essential job. Those trucks were on the road. Those warehouses were still up and running and open. And so now that everybody's back to work, now that everybody's making money, making money relatively, they still need higher wages, but everybody's back to spending money again. Everybody's back to work, which means you need more supply because there's more demand for all of that stuff. And so all of the sudden, there's a supply chain issue. What's the issue? You forgot to set your alarm clock? Like, what's going on? Why are gas prices higher? There's no reason. But it's super weird as they're pulling out troops in Afghanistan. You see, it's like you naturally correlate. Wow, is this because we're pulling out troops from Afghanistan? Do we need to be there for our gas prices to drop? It's like we're getting these little jolts of trauma that take our attention away. And every week we get focused on something new, but it's not something new. It's actually all the same, but we gotta start addressing all of this together. Like, accept that what you're seeing in Somalia is not really any different than what you're seeing in Afghanistan and Syria. And it's just as important to talk about. And ask that your favorite journalists that they talk about this stuff. These politicians, for the most part, are full of shit. And they're distractions, all of them. So unless these people are talking about the politicians in the context of these issues, you should not care. Unless you're one of those people who lives in New York and AOC is about to be your governor, then you might want to talk about her. Keep telling y'all. I told y'all that's coming. Y'all didn't believe me. And they're like, what? I said it like 3 months ago, something like that. Whatever. Fun fact. So everybody remembers how Gretchen Whitmer, Andrew Cuomo, Gavin Newsom throughout the entire pandemic, they're our champions. We love them so much. They end up skyrocketing to the top, to the most favored candidates for the 2024 presidential primary. Well, Kamala Harris is extremely unpopular. Remember? Really, really, really unpopular. And she don't like competition. So as soon as they get in power, the 3 most championed governors during the pandemic all come under scrutiny at the same time. Nursing home sexual assault scandal for Cuomo, nursing home falsification of COVID numbers for Gretchen Whitmer, and then Gavin Newsom's in a recall for everything at this point. And then Cuomo gets forced to resign. Literally a member of the New York royal family. And not for nothing, but powerful white men like Cuomo, they don't get held accountable for sexual assault. They become presidents. Unless you're, 1, trying to take out your competition, but 2, maybe you need somebody to take over that position. Like the woman from the Bronx that is from New York that you need to insulate to maintain her popularity, because Congress is about to take the ass whipping of a lifetime in the midterms. The votes that they're about to put up are going to just get worse. Everybody is catching on to her voting patterns. So you need to protect her if she's going to make sure Kamala has a brand strong enough to win the election by promising what's to come and what will be through AOC. And then you get to bolster the executive experience of the first elected woman and the youngest governor in the most powerful state in the country and in history. Makes for a wonderful storyline, huh? Oh, and then as soon as Cuomo announces his resignation, it was like a 24-hour turnover, or the night before Cuomo announces resignation, CNN does a special for AOC. I'll tell you, it's too easy. They snitch on themselves. It's obvious. It's obvious. Now, I want y'all to remember this conversation. Whenever AOC announces her run for governor, I want everybody to remember this conversation. And I need my flowers, bro, because it's too easy. Keep telling y'all, Niko Damas. But don't worry, like y'all don't gotta worry really. Like ain't like AOC gonna do shit when she become governor. Come on, guys, relax. We know AOC don't do shit in Congress. Yeah. So, all right, people, really quick. I'm going to be going on Heartland's Media around 5:30 Eastern. No, excuse me, that's tech check. 6:30 Eastern, if I'm not mistaken. 5:30 or 6:30. Let me check. It's a good question. I don't want to lie to y'all. Uh, 6:30. We have tech check at 5:30. So go check that out. I'll be on Heartlands tonight. And then after that, I will be doing another live stream discussing the CIA's involvement with trying to overthrow, well, not just CIA and the UK, and their involvement in trying to overthrow Russia and its proximity to this issue in Belarus, where all these Olympic athletes just out of nowhere have decided to come out and say, I fear for my life. I can't go back. I got to go seek asylum in Germany. Sound familiar? It always sounds familiar. It always sounds familiar because it's all the same. They're lazy. And what's even crazier is they're kind of stuck because they don't know any other way. They're doing what there's a bunch of old white people who've been doing this for damn near 70, 80 years. They have no idea how to do anything different. These are the same plans. So now that we know, we can start calling them out. It's about resources. That's all it's about. That's all it's ever about. All right, people. With that being said, thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mikasa Sukasa. Don't forget to like this video, share this video. Make sure to go follow us over on Rockfin as well. And on Twitter, of course, you can see the handle's right there. It's right there. You can see it right now. Right there. Okay. So like, share. Don't forget to subscribe. But of course, always remember more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.